Chapter 348. National Treasury. Come out. As Wang Xian waved his arm, streams of dense dragon energy flowed towards the heart of ancient god Kuan Breeder, and surrounded the drop of blood. A drop of fiery red was pulled out of the corpse. The drop of blood was moving vigorously as if it was in fear and horror. Wang Xian looked at the small drop of blood from the ancient god Kuan Breeder. This could very well be the last of its kind. There is still the presence of intelligence in the blood. Are these the memories of this corpse? Wang Xian looked at the shimmering drop of blood. He moved his hand and ejected dragon energy to erase the lingering spirit in it. Arg! This is the only bloodline of the ancient god that remains. I'm not convinced. Our clan shall live on for eternity. A wretched voice rang in Wang Xian's mind suddenly. He was stunned. How terrifying! Wang Xian sighed as he looked at this droplet of blood. Rumble! At this instant, the corpse beside him started cracking and was eventually reduced to ashes. Essence soul of the ancient god breeder level? Extraction of dragon energy not possible. Essence soul? When Wang Xian received information about this drop of blood, he was taken aback. Essence soul. An essence soul is a combination of the essence blood and the soul. In other words, a thought struck Wang Xian suddenly and he was thrilled. Inheritance, this is an inheritance. Wang Xian's body couldn't help but tremble with excitement. This was the inheritance of the ancient god Kuan Breeder. If one was to absorb this drop of blood, one would have a high chance of becoming a member of the ancient gods and the last ancient god Kuan Breeder in the entire universe. It's no surprise that the last words of the voice were, "Our clan shall live on forever." So this explains it. Wang Xian mumbled to himself as he was filled with anticipation and excitement. Consuming this essence soul will allow one to inherit the bloodline of the ancient god Kuan Breeder and become a member of the ancient gods. It's a shame that I already have the bloodline of the divine dragon and hence cannot consume it. I can give this. Wang Xian started considering who he should give this to. This was a priceless item. Therefore, he would only give it to his closest kin or friends or his subordinates like the Dragonians. Let's leave this place first. Wang Xian put the essence soul away and moved like a phantom towards the temporary base. Why is everyone gathered here? From afar, Wang Xian noticed that the temporary base was brightly illuminated. All the experts were either standing on top of the tents or levitating in the air. Wang Xian made a detour and appeared beside Sun Lingxiu. Why is everyone gathered here? What are they looking out for? Wang Xian asked Sun Lingxiu with a bright smile. No one dares to head in that direction. The tremors from the battles ahead were too shocking. Xiao Xian, you are really incredible. Have you settled everything? She asked. Sun Lingxiu also possessed the divine dragon's bloodline currently, and practiced the light divine dragon transformation. She knew that Wang Xian had been involved in the battle previously. It's settled. I believe we should be able to head back tomorrow. Wang Xian smiled and looked around him. The crowd of experts gathered to discuss the battle ahead of them. Even though the commotion had died down, no one dared to head over. Although this happened at midnight, no one was feeling sleepy. They had gathered and were discussing the situation fervently. On the other hand, Wang Xian was very relaxed and wasn't tense like the others. He returned to his room to take his rest. On the next morning, Wang Xian learned that the middle-aged man in military uniform had led some soldiers to recce around the Yellow River in the wee hours of the day. In the end, he brought back the good news that all the mutated creatures had vanished, including those that might be hiding within the Yellow River. They found the corpses of some mutated creatures in the river. This shocked everyone in the base, but they were relieved at the same time. The crowd recalled the horrifying battle that had occurred at midnight. Perhaps other creatures had killed those mutated creatures or chased them away. Miracle Dr. Sun. This is your reward. Chapter 349. Two Treasures. There's more than one eyeing the treasures which he has on hand. Bian Yaoquan jeered as he swept his gaze across coldly. The elders looked over with hesitation. How do we allocate the treasures with the outsiders? They asked. We'll give them enough elixir pills after we inform them prior. I believe they'll agree to it. Bian Yaoquan replied. As he spoke, he lifted his head slightly, before glaring at Wang Xian and Sun Lingxiu with bloodthirst in his eyes. I want that fellow dead. I want that bitch pleading for mercy while kneeling between my legs. He snapped with a grimace. As they looked at Bian Yaoquan, the poison duo hesitated briefly as their hearts stirred, before nodding in agreement. Leave this matter to us, the poison duo replied. As they spoke, they looked across at the crowd before making their way towards them. Oh, the National Treasury was located in Shangjing. Wang Xian and the rest flew over to Shangjing in the military helicopter, and arrived at the military airport by evening. Please follow me, a stern drill instructor said to them while he led the way. The trio boarded a military jeep with the drill instructor, and together they drove towards the palace in Shangjing. Upon arrival at the main entrance of the palace, two gatekeepers handed 4 eye masks to the quartet. Put on the eye masks, they ordered. Including the drill instructor who had fetched them over, everyone complied. Upon receiving the eye masks, Wang Xian and group tied them over their eyes, and began to make their way inside under the directions of 2 soldiers. Eye masks were useless on Wang Xian. They kept walking inwards and made countless turns, and after many rounds of checks conducted by numerous personnel, the group finally arrived at their last location within the palace. Over here was a small mountain. Constant roars could be heard from the small mountain. In front of the mountain was a boulder, which Wang Xian could clearly see split open, opening up to a staircase which descended to the underground. How stringent, Wang Xian exclaimed. The National Treasury was after all situated in Shangjing, which was backed by the strongest military manpower. Furthermore, it was located within the palace. It was literally impossible for anyone to attempt to trespass. Remove the eye masks and hand them to me. A voice could be heard from beneath them. As Wang Xian and the rest followed suit, they looked down the stairs. A scholarly and poised elder dressed in tang suit welcomed Wang Xian and the rest with a gentle smile. You've got only 2 gold medallions, so you can only choose 2 pieces of treasures, the elder explained. To which, he continued, follow me. Wang Xian and the rest nodded, and together they entered with curiosity. Is there anything which you have in mind? The elder asked amiably as he led the way ahead. Elder, are there any alchemy furnaces in the National Treasury? Wang Xian asked straightforwardly. His main purpose this time was to get into the National Treasury to lay hands on one. An alchemy furnace? Young man, are you an alchemist? The elder asked out of curiosity, while he paused briefly and turned his head over to face Wang Xian. Yes, Wang Xian answered with a nod. How regretful we've run out of alchemy furnaces. The last one's been taken by the medical saint sect, the elder explained as he shook his head lightly. Alchemy furnaces are few to begin with. There were previously 3 in the National Treasury, but they have since been taken by the medical saint sect and the medical tripod mountain sect, the elder continued. All taken? Wang Xian quizzed. Not exactly taken, but traded in exchange using elixir pills, haha. The elder laughed. If there's anything else you have in mind, I can bring you over directly. That'll speed things up, he added. Wang Xian furrowed his brows. To think there were no alchemy furnaces at the National Treasury. The secret manual of the art of cultivation, elixir pill recipes, weapons, spiritual stones, and cash, the elder listed. With a laugh he continued, this gold medallion is worth $20 billion. Haha, that's 2,000 spiritual stones. We'll look around ourselves. Wang Xian acknowledged with a nod. Sure, but no browsing of the secret elixir pill recipes. As for the rest, help yourselves, the elder said before they went down the last flight of stairs and arrived at a huge space. Wang Xian and group were shocked by the sight before them. My oh my, this place is a gold mountain, the miracle Dr. Bloodman gasped as he peered inside with glowing eyes. Up ahead was a massive area measuring a radius of 2 kilometers. It held objects of all sorts, where each and every one of them shone in shimmering light. Not that many per se. Many of our nation's treasures have been snatched by some of the international forces. The elder shook his head with a tinge of dismay in his eyes. True. 30 years ago, major international forces treated this place as a treasure trove. They went on a mad spree looting all sorts of valuable resources from here. Spiritual medicine, weapons, relics. Had it not been for the emergence of the guardian divine beasts. TSK. The miracle Dr. Bloodman said dryly, clearly aware of some of the history. The guardian divine beasts? Wang Xian asked. That's a nation-guarding divine beast, the elder emphasized as he stuck his chest out, beaming with a sense of pride. The world's most formidable, the nation-guarding divine beast, the miracle Dr. Bloodman called out, slightly spooked, as he recalled the legends. The nation-guarding divine beasts, Wang Xian uttered under his breath, but did not question further, as he continued to survey the surroundings. The secret manual of the art of cultivation's over there. While this is the weaponry area, the elixir-related items are over here along with some miscellaneous pieces. Take your pick over here, the elder said to them in a bid to digress from the earlier topic. Wang Xian nodded in acknowledgement and stepped forward. As he swept his gaze across, several messages popped up continually in his head. Space-shattering sword. Level 9. Giant watchtower sword. Level 10. Huyang blade. Level 8. Oh. Weapons of varied levels were hanging within a crate, along with inborn spiritual weapons of level 8 to 9. It's no doubt the national treasury. There are so many treasures in here. Wang Xian exclaimed. He was uninterested in the weapons, and harbored few intentions with the secret manual of the art of cultivation. Thus he made his way over to the area of elixir-related items. There were no elixir pills in the area, but only elixir pill recipes and manuals on the art of refining elixir pills. As Wang Xian scanned past, he realized that the area held less elixir pill recipes than Sui Huang's, while he knew many of the ones here. Huh! A flame bead! Wang Xian called out. He was on his way out of a Messier storage area, when he caught sight of the object which was encased in a crystal. Barraging blaze ball. Level 10. A level 10 flame bead, Wang Xian said in excitement. His current Dragon Ball had peaked at level 10. It would take him several years of cultivation before it could upgrade to level 11. Yet, by absorbing this barraging blaze bead, his Dragon Ball would ascend to level 11 immediately. Once the Dragon Ball reached level 11, it could transform into an Inferno Divine Dragon, killing inborn experts and dealing with Dan Realm experts with ease. I'm taking this flame bead, Wang Xian decided. Stretching out his hand, he grabbed onto the flame bead. One more item to go, the elder said casually as he stood at his side. The flame bead was an extremely precious treasure. When acquired, it could help an inborn expert of the fire element to double their combat abilities. Wang Xian nodded as he glanced ahead at the voluminous objects. Strange-looking stones, shimmering bangles, rings, bizarre robot puppets, and wares of all sorts. A look across and one could see many items with powers of level 7 to 8, even up to level 9. Especially the strange-looking human stone sculpture, which was, in fact, a level 9 ancient war marionette. Zing zing. Just then, an unexplained force of attraction came surging over, and Wang Xian felt something inside of him tugging. He looked over, slightly taken aback. Chapter 350. Level 11. Wang. Wang Xian was shocked as he stared at the branch which had only been the size of an arm previously. This is... in my body? Wang Xian felt the desire within his body, and an object flashed in his mind. This was something which he had nearly forgotten. It was the progenitor tree, the object that was extracted from the stone-bedding rock from Jade Nation. The ancestor of all wood, the progenitor tree. When the progenitor tree was first absorbed into his body, Wang Xian had tirelessly practiced for an entire month to provide the Azure Dragon energy for it to absorb. However, it didn't show any signs of movements after taking root within his body. It did not bring him any major benefits or any changes. All it did was remain silently in his body. But now the progenitor tree was reacting rigorously, and desired to absorb that soul-returning branch. Wang Xian recalled seeing records of the soul-returning tree in an ancient book. The soul-returning tree was a magical thing. If one was to latch a small part of his soul with the soul-returning tree, the person's soul would be absorbed by it when he died. After absorbing the soul, the tree would bear the soul fruit. Through a special method, one could be revived. This was a divine tree with unimaginable powers that was recorded in the mythology. He didn't expect he would find a branch of the soul-returning tree. However, this branch has almost lost all its vitality. Furthermore, this is just a level 9 item, and is a far cry from other inborn spiritual weapons. Wang Xian was having second thoughts. He was not sure about the truthfulness of the records on the soul-returning tree. Furthermore, it wouldn't be a wise choice to get a level 9 item when there were so many inborn spiritual objects around. Just as Wang Xian was hesitating, the desire from the progenitor tree within his body grew even stronger. Let's hope that the progenitor tree would bring better changes after absorbing this branch. Otherwise, I would have made a dumb decision. Wang Xian felt a little gloomy. He picked up the soul-returning branch and said, "I'll be getting this." The old man was a little surprised to see Wang Xian pick up a wretched branch. Although that branch wasn't ordinary, it was at most a level 8 or 9 item based on his experience. It was still a far cry from an inborn spiritual object. Nonetheless, he wouldn't mind Wang Xian choosing a wretched branch. "You can't reverse your decision once you have chosen," said the old man plainly with a gentle smile. "Naturally," replied Wang Xian as he nodded his head. Subsequently, he looked at the old man and asked, "I heard that Medical Saint Sect and Medical Tripod Mountain Sect could exchange items here with elixir pills. Is this still allowed now?" "Exchange? That will depend on the elixir pills you are offering and the item you would like to get. If we have the need, we could do the exchange." The old man smiled and replied, "I'd like to get some spiritual stones." Wang Xian replied instantly. At this point, Wang Xian had 5,000 spiritual stones. This included spiritual stones gathered by the Dragonians and those from the floating island. He was still short 5,000 to have enough to build the Dragon Palace. Besides that, he had gathered close to 60% of all other resources required. As long as he had enough spiritual stones, the construction of the Dragon Palace was in sight. "If it is just spiritual stones, we can purchase your elixir pills based on the market rates," the old man replied. "All right. For level 1 elixir pills, I have 150 chi accumulation pills and 30 body strengthening pills. For level 2 elixir pills, I have 20 bone grinding pills and 15 channel nourishing pills. For level 3 elixir pills, I have 20 soul enhancement pills." Wang Xian took out some pills of each type as he explained to the old man. "Wow, so much!" The old man gasped in shock. The old man beamed and started counting the value of these elixir pills silently. 2,000 spiritual stones. "We can offer you 2,000 spiritual stones. If you want more, this deal is off." 2,000 spiritual stones. Wang Xian nodded his head slightly and continued, "These pills are in Rivertown currently? How shall we do the trade?" "I will give you a number later. You can call this number when you are back in Rivertown. Someone will contact you about the details for the trade," the elderly man said with a big smile. "All right," Wang Xian replied with a nod. After exiting the National Treasury, Wang Xian and Miracle Dr. Bloodman put on the eye masks again as they walked out. Night had fallen and the moon hung high up in the skies when they left the palace. Wang Xian looked at the time and realized it was already past 9 p.m. However, as a city that never sleeps, Shangjing was still well lit. The skyscrapers around and the shops were still operating. Wang Xian looked at Sun Lingxiu and asked, "What would you like to eat?" I would like some authentic roasted duck of Shangjing. Speaking of which, this is my first time in Shangjing." Sun Lingxiu looked around her before turning towards Wang Xian and replying with a beautiful smile, "This is just my second time here. Let's go have some roasted duck," exclaimed Wang Xian. Subsequently, they called for a hired car to bring them to the famous roasted duck restaurant. Miracle Dr. Bloodman saw his master with Wang Xian. Therefore, he pretended to be invisible and followed behind them silently. At the same time, he was observing this prosperous city inquisitively. After dinner, the trio found a hotel to rest at before heading back to Rivertown the next day. In the hotel, Wang Xian took out the barraging blaze ball and soul-returning branch. "Devour!" He spat out the dragon ball and watched it slowly devour the barraging blaze ball. The Dragon Ball was the size of an egg, but emitted a scorching high temperature. Wang Xian hurriedly isolated the flames by sending in streams of dragon energy before continuing his observations solemnly. The Dragon Ball had now devoured the Lava Ball, Body-Refining Spiritual Flame Ball, and the Barraging Blaze Ball. The three different spiritual flame balls each had their own unique effects. The Lava Ball was dense and highly penetrative, the Body-Refining Spiritual Flame Ball was gentle, and the Barraging Blaze Ball was violent. On the Dragon Ball, a faint but vivid image of an Inferno Divine Dragon materialized and appeared savage. Roar! When the dragon fully absorbed the Barraging Blaze Ball, faint cries of a dragon emanated from it. The Dragon Ball started rotating slowly. Dragon Ball, Level 11. Witnessing the evolution of the Dragon Ball, Wang Xian was ecstatic. A Level 11 Inferno Dragon Ball could exhibit the power of a Dan Realm expert under his control. With the support from the Inferno Divine Dragon and while he was in his human form, there would be few Dan Realm experts who could match him. Wang Xian then turned his attention to the soul-returning branch. He picked it up and started to inspect it. Besides the mysterious energy in it, the branch was no different from any other withered branches. Wang Xian's eyebrows knitted together. Dense streams of azure dragon energy started to flow into the branch. Wang! At this moment, the branch seemed to be activated and started to emit a grayish glow. Wang! Suddenly, Wang Xian felt as though the progenitor tree had extended out a needle-thin extension that penetrated through his body and into contact with the soul-returning branch. To his astonishment, the soul-returning branch was pulled into his body. A sapling the size of an index finger was wiggling in Wang Xian's body. Subsequently, the first branch grew out of the sapling. The branch was different from the jade-green progenitor tree. This branch was grayish and it was emitting a grayish glow. It looked incomparably mysterious. Wang Xian was astonished as he stared at the progenitor tree in his body. What is this damn thing? Other than growing a branch, there are no other changes after absorbing the soul-returning branch. Chapter 351 Ambush. Wang Xian assessed the progenitor tree in his body with a heavy look. Yet, he had neither discovered the use of it, nor observed any physical changes to the tree after studying it for the day. It remained rooted and swaying within Wang Xian's body, completely indifferent about him. Forget it. If a young sapling of the progenitor tree, which is also regarded as the origin of all trees, is able to enter my body, then it should be pretty formidable. Wang Xian consoled himself, which was also all that he could do for now as he lay on the bed to rest. At dawn, Wang Xian, Sun Lingxiu and Miracle Dr. Bloodman rushed for the airport in a rented car after having breakfast at the hotel. As the airport was located in the suburbs, there were no neighborhoods within a radius of several kilometers. Dear guests, how many visits have you made to the Shangjing? The middle-aged driver asked. As he spoke, he looked through the rearview mirror and smiled at Wang Xian and Sun Lingxiu, while they sat behind. Just a few, Wang Xian replied with a smile. Oh, the driver acknowledged with glee. Just then his phone rang. Hey old Wang, what's up? The driver said as he answered the call. The bridge is congested due to a traffic incident? I'm in a rush to the airport. What rotten luck. Sure, I got it. The driver replied to the caller before he looked at Miracle Dr. Bloodman who was sitting beside him. There's been an accident on the road at the bridge. My coworker said a muck truck has been overturned and toppled on top of a smaller car. The entire car's flattened. How terrible, the driver informed. For now it'll be tough to drive over. I can only take you through a shortcut. The driver continued, chatting conversationally with the Miracle Dr. Bloodman. We're catching the morning flight at 10 a.m. So long as we don't miss it, it's fine. The Miracle Dr. Bloodman replied to the driver nonchalantly. Relax, not to worry. I guarantee we won't be late. Besides, it's only an additional 3 to 4 kilometers of driving, the driver assured with a laugh as he accelerated. Wang Xian and Sun Lingxiu were not the least bit bothered either, as the two continued chatting softly in the back seat. Holding on to Sun Lingxiu's illuminating pearl, Wang Xian assisted in cultivating it, using his dragon energy. This illuminating pearl was a mere level 9, which was a tad too low given Sun Lingxiu's powers. But with her physical constitution and light divine dragon transformation, it would not be long before she could upgrade this illuminating pearl to level 10. This illuminating pearl would make a piece of pretty good jewelry. Sun Lingxiu joked gleefully, as she placed it on her neck and gestured to Wang Xian. That's because you're pretty. Wang Xian smiled back. Sun Lingxiu blushed. Screech. Apologies. Sorry, I need to go relieve myself. The driver apologized as he stopped the car. The car was parked along a narrow pathway, where remnants of demolished houses remained on its sides. There was not a soul around. Excusing himself briefly, the driver got out of the car before running to the back, as if it was really urgent. Wang Xian and others remained unbothered. Pit-pat, pit-pat. Suddenly at that moment, a sound came from underneath the car. Oh no, the miracle Dr. Bloodman shouted with a contorted expression upon hearing the noise. Wang Xian and Sun Lingxiu were taken by surprise. Boom! In the next moment, they felt a powerful wave of energy surging from beneath the car towards them. With a shudder on his face, Wang Xian picked Sun Lingxiu up and dodged immediately, as the earth dragon energy surrounded the air with the color of custard. However, miracle Dr. Bloodman was not as lucky. Boom boom boom. As the explosions continued, the entire rental car blew into pieces. To the point where more than half of the car turned into ashes due to the blasts. These terrifying explosions were more powerful than a single all-kill strike by an inborn expert. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The explosions had just ended when a gush of thick green smog came blowing in their direction. TSK 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 TSK. In the air, the green smog was sizzling, and as droplets of liquid fell to the ground, they began to corrode the land. As the land eroded, it opened up many little holes the depth of a finger along the pathway. If a drop of the liquid was this horrifying, imagine the terror of this poisonous green smog which now covered the area of 100 meters in radius. Death was almost guaranteed if one remained within. The divine lightning column, how powerful! It's almost as deadly as the attacks by one from the Dan realm, a voice commented. Haha! Young Master Bian, we the Xiao family have made this divine lightning column by enduring huge risks, while gathering lightning and thunder. Of course it's very formidable, another replied. The poisonous liquid from Old Du really kills without warning. Such potent poison can kill hundreds of thousands. Even an inborn expert will surely die by coming into contact. A third voice exclaimed. Ak. One must use their brains in order to lay an ambush to kill. With so many destructive weapons, slaying 3 inborn experts would be such an easy feat. The last voice boasted. Right then, on the dilapidated buildings of houses which were soon to be demolished, several figures stood. There was a total of 7 of them. There was a young man, watching emotionlessly with hands resting on his back. It was Bian Yaoquan. On his side stood the poison duo. Alongside the trio were 4 inborn experts. Amongst them was a middle-aged man with specks of lightning zapping all over his body. The second was a thin and frail old man with a dark stare. And the remaining 2 were chubby elders with striking resemblance. The group of 7 were watching the scene below with satisfied smiles. Meanwhile, the area below was covered in green smog within a 100-meter radius. The sizzling noise kept coming, and the area looked like a living hell. As drops of green liquid fell onto the ground, it gave form to numerous deep narrow holes. A giant pothole was formed within a 20-meter radius due to the explosion earlier. The pothole was 5 meters deep, and looked absolutely horrendous. Seems like inviting you guys over was the right choice. Bian Yaoquan smirked as he looked at the area below. Haha, why of course, the ominous and feeble-looking elder laughed with a wide grin, revealing his stained teeth. Sigh. It's such a pity that the holy goddess should die just like this. Truly a pity. Bian Yaoquan said dryly as he stared at the clouds of green gases which loomed over the area. Haha. Young Master Bian's a true gentleman who treasures the ladies. I hope young Master Bian will not forget to pay us for this mission after. The 2 chubby elders teased as they roared in laughter. That's for sure. I, Bian Yaoquan, am a man of my word. Bian Yaoquan replied conceitedly. Ah, a voice shouted. You bunch of jerks, the voice continued. Just then, a figure flew out from the explosions and poisonous smog. The miracle Dr. Bloodman was drenched in blood. As the fresh coagulated blood soaked him thoroughly, it made him look really pathetic. He flew out from the poisonous smog, before falling onto the ground in excruciating pain. The cries from miracle Dr. Bloodman attracted Bian Yaoquan, who raised an eyebrow. "Oh, there's a fellow who survived," Bian Yaoquan exclaimed in excitement as he looked over. "Haha. He shed a few layers of skin," the poison duo added as they watched miracle Dr. Bloodman, as though they were assessing a dead body. "TSK, are the other two completely dead? How upsetting," Bian Yaoquan commented. He was somewhat disappointed upon seeing the miracle Dr. Bloodman on the floor, crying in pain after flying out from the rubble. "I even prepared to have some fun with them," Bian Yaoquan continued, as he raised his brows in a face of discontentment. "Whoever offended him shall die." But, just as he ended his statement, a voice came from amidst the poisonous smog. "Oh. You won't be disappointed," the voice assured. Chapter 352. Killed in 10 seconds. Within the poison fog, an emotionless voice emanated, following which traces of light shone out from it. SSS. The surrounding poisonous green fog was vanishing at a rapid pace. Light gradually illuminated the surroundings. What? At this point, Bian Yaoquan and the other 6 men stood on a dilapidated house. Seeing the gradually strengthening light, they were shocked. Inborn spiritual weapon, it must be a defensive type inborn spiritual object. The emaciated old man stared at the 2 figures with his gloomy eyes and said in a definitive tone, "That's right. It must be defensive inborn spiritual armor or something similar. Otherwise, they would definitely not be able to avoid the explosion of the divine lightning column." The middle-aged man seconded with a definitive tone. "Inborn level defensive armor." Greed gleamed in Bian Yaoquan's eyes. First it was inborn spiritual weapon Zhanlu and now an inborn level defensive armor? There must be another inborn level item with him. If I can get all of them. As Bian Yaoquan spoke, he got enthusiastic and agitated. If he had 3 inborn spiritual objects, he could kill an inborn expert despite only being at the half-step to inborn realm. If I can get 3 inborn spiritual objects, the position of the sect leader of the medical saint sect in the future will definitely be mine. Ecstasy welled up in him. He looked below him and started laughing. "Haha! Great! You have not disappointed me. You have not disappointed me. It's only interesting this way. All the inborn spiritual objects you have are all mine. Miracle Doctor, Holy Goddess, I'll dote on you dearly in the future." Bian Yaoquan laughed hysterically. "What gives you the courage to assassinate us here?" Green poisonous fog slowly dissipated under the illumination of Sun Lingxiu's dazzling rays. Wang Xian stood up, lifted his head and stared at the 7 figures on the roof of a dilapidated house. He focused on Bian Yaoquan, who was in the middle, and stared at him with murderous eyes. If he had not reacted in time to the horrifying attack previously, Sun Lingxiu would likely have suffered grave injuries. Moreover, even he had suffered some light injuries in the previous explosion. Fixing his gaze on the 7 figures he wanted to slay, Wang Xian slowly opened up his palms. "That's right. We are going to kill you." Bian Yaoquan looked down at Wang Xian from higher ground and revealed an eerie smile. He looked across at the severely injured miracle Dr. Bloodman, showed a bloodthirsty expression and shouted, "You shall die today. Kill them." The inborn experts around him quickly exchanged glances. "Let's attack him together. He has 3 inborn spiritual objects with him," the poison duo said to the other 4 men. "Even if he has 3 inborn spiritual objects, he will still die by the hands of the 6 of us. The youngest miracle doctor and a powerful alchemist. What a shame. I just love to kill geniuses." 2 identical fat old men squinted their eyes and moved in unison towards Wang Xian. "Die!" The other 4 inborn experts also struck at the same time. From above they shrouded Wang Xian in their powerful inborn auras. Wang Xian lifted his head slightly and saw 6 inborn experts approaching him. Contempt was written over his face. Since you guys are interested in what I have, I guess I should show it to you guys. As he finished his words, Wang Xian opened his palm and the dragon ball that emitted violent lava-like heat slowly floated up. Spiritual flame ball. Haha, that's a good one. When Bian Yaoquan, who was on the rooftop, noticed the dragon ball in Wang Xian's palm, he was thrilled. Spiritual flame ball is highly useful in refining elixir pills. Great. I like this treasure. TSK. Wang Xian sneered upon hearing his laughter. At this moment, the two fat old men drew large axes from their backs. The axes were entirely black and looked incomparably heavy. They slashed them towards Wang Xian directly. Die! Roar! The voices of the two old men sounded. However, what they received in return was a dragon roar. A rampaging dragon roar. What? To the astonishment of the 6 inborn experts, the dragon ball turned into an inferno divine dragon that spanned close to 10 meters. In the instant the divine dragon appeared, the air in the atmosphere started becoming violent. The surroundings were filled with violent molecules. The inferno divine dragon was as real as it could get. Its surface was like lava and flames were raging furiously on it. The dragon ball had assimilated the attributes of the barraging blaze ball. Roar! The inferno divine dragon moved and swung its claws towards the two approaching fat old men. The dragon claws were 1 meter long and emanated powerful energies. The two fat old men could feel the powers of the dragon claws and turned solemn. Die! Moving almost in sync, the two old men lifted the huge axes in their hands. A layer of metal glow shrouded the giant axes, doubling their size to 2 meters. Boom! The dragon claws clashed with the axes. Ka. However, the huge 2-meter axes were easily pushed back and started breaking apart. Boom! As the Inferno Divine Dragon exerted some strength, the giant axes started melting rapidly. The two fat old men were horrified. However, the momentum of the dragon claws didn't slow at all as they grabbed onto them. Art! 2 pitiful cries propagated. In less than a second, all cries had stopped. What? The 4 inborn experts that were following closely behind were petrified. The double-faced heavenly axe duo had been in the inborn realm for more than 10 years. Moreover, their combination strike was widely known to be extremely powerful. Yet, they were killed in an instant. Fear gripped the 4 men's hearts. Before they could react, the Inferno Divine Dragon was already right before them. Kill! The 4 men gritted their teeth and growled. Poison Duo waved their hands and balls of poison were hurled towards the Inferno Divine Dragon directly. However, these poison balls were reduced to dust before they could even reach the Inferno Divine Dragon. A middle-aged man filled with electric energy held a metal hammer in his hand. He smashed his hammer heavily towards the void space. Bolts of lightning fell onto the body of the Inferno Divine Dragon. However, the attacks were still futile. This petrified the 4 inborn experts. Boom! The Inferno Divine Dragon swayed its huge tail towards them. The horrifying dragon tail brought with it a force of over 10,000 pounds. Bam! Bam! Poison Duo, who were at the forefront of the group, didn't even have the time and space to react. Their bodies were smashed towards one of the dilapidated houses by the side as though they were rubber balls. After smashing through a dozen-plus houses, they finally landed heavily on a wall. Roar! The Inferno Divine Dragon stretched its head in a motion towards the other 2 inborn experts. The next moment it spewed flames on them. Art! Raging flames fell onto their bodies and the 2 inborn experts felt as though they had landed through the opening of a volcano. Their eyes were filled with desperation and fear. Looking at the young man standing before them, hatred welled up in them. The whole process lasted less than 10 seconds. 6 inborn experts were killed. Given the elixir pills I have, together with these 4 soul enhancement pills, I'll have enough spiritual stones for the construction of the Dragon Palace once they are sold. Wang Xian cheered excitedly. Aside from spiritual stones, Wang Xian was also running short on some gold and silver, though not by huge margins. Besides, they could be bought with money. And while he was currently broke, Wang Xian could first advance payment from Lan Qingyue's end or even borrow for the time being. Moreover, he still had more spiritual grasses on the floating island. Spiritual stones are the most important when it comes to constructing the Dragon Palace, which will be completed faster when there are enough spiritual stones. And as for now, they're sufficient. Wang Xian grinned. With a swing of his arm, he cremated the body. These 4 soul enhancement pills should be meant as payment for the 4 inborn experts. Seems like I've gained favor then. Wang Xian chuckled before he came to check on the remaining bodies. As inborn experts, there were bound to be treasures on them, which could easily fetch hundreds of millions when sold. After a search, some venom and more than 100 spiritual stones were found. Is everything all right? Wang Xian asked as he returned to check on Miracle Dr. Bloodman, who had gone pale. It'll take more than half a month to recover. Damn it, they almost squeezed my blood dry. Miracle Dr. Bloodman cursed weakly, while all color had gone from his face. It's good that you're all right, Wang Xian nodded, to which, he turned to face Sun Lingxiu. Let's go, he gestured to her. Sure. Sun Lingxiu nodded back, and together the trio made their way to the airport on foot. Along the way, Wang Xian made several calls. He asked Lan Qingyue, Old Qin and Old Shui to assist him in gathering the final materials needed to construct the Dragon Palace. Ordinary materials such as steel were a piece of cake for them. It was already afternoon by the time they arrived back at the villa by air, while Xiao Yu and the others were attending classes. Miracle Dr. Bloodman headed right back to the other villa to nurse his injuries. Whereas Wang Xian turned to Sun Lingxiu and said, Come, let me take you to a place. Oh, where are we going? Sun Lingxiu asked in surprise. Follow me and you'll see. Wang Xian beamed in a great mood. They arrived by the seaside before they sped over in the direction of the floating island. The island up front is a floating island. It'll be considered as our marine base in times to come. Wang Xian introduced. Thereafter, he hopped onto the island with a leap. As Sun Lingxiu followed behind, she surveyed the entire island with wide eyes. The floating island, to think it's the legendary floating island. Goodness, Xiaoxian. To think you actually managed to obtain a floating island. Sun Lingxiu cried out in astonishment. I'm planning to start building the Dragon Palace within the next couple of days. Wang Xian said coolly. What? Build a Dragon Palace? Sun Lingxiu was shocked. As one with the bloodline of the divine dragon, it was only natural that Sun Lingxiu knew about the Dragon Palace and its significance. It symbolized the real standing of a divine dragon race. That's right. Wang Xian admitted without the slightest concealment, given there was no need for him to hide anything from Sun Lingxiu. I plan to construct a stately dragon palace amidst this boundless sea. Wang Xian shared with passion in his eyes. I'll always be by your side, Xiaoxian. Sun Lingxiu exclaimed. Looking upon a high-spirited and lofty Wang Xian, she let out a faint smile, as if vowing in her heart never to leave till death do they part. It won't be long before I, Wang Xian, conquer the seas and this entire galaxy, Wang Xian asserted while overwhelmed with fighting spirit. And thus began the conquest of the oceans. Soon, the divine dragon would officially set foot into this boundless sea. Chapter 354. Boundless Seas, the choice of location for the Dragon Palace, 2. Currently, I'm only able to build a level 1 Dragon Palace. However, even a level 1 Dragon Palace wouldn't be any weaker than the base of a sacred sect. A level 1 Dragon Palace can be established in the depths of the sea. The area of the Dragon Palace could cover a radius of 10 kilometers. This is just a preliminary Dragon Palace. In the future, I'm going to build more structures. Wang Xian didn't know much about the preliminary Dragon Palace. However, he was sure that the Dragon Palace couldn't be built in the Bohai Sea. Bohai Sea was just a small piece of the seas with a depth of several tens of meters. Wang Xian wasn't certain of the exact height of the Dragon Palace. However, it would definitely be more than several tens of meters. The location where he would build his Dragon Palace would at least have to be 400 to 500 meters deep. The location of the Dragon Palace wouldn't stay stationary forever. A level 2 dragon palace would be able to move. In fact, when the dragon palace reached a higher level, it could even become a dragon nation. A dragon nation could fly in the air directly and would be incomparably powerful. Wang Xian brought Sun Lingxiu around the floating island. Subsequently, he dived into the sea. Prime Minister Turtle, follow me to look for a region in the seas to build the dragon palace. Wang Xian transmitted his orders to Prime Minister Turtle. Yes, Dragon King. Prime Minister Turtle's huge body floated rapidly. Wang Xian stood on it as they moved rapidly towards the deeper seas. The sea was beautiful, majestic, and unfathomable. Standing on the back of the giant Prime Minister Turtle, Wang Xian looked around him. Regions that were tens of meters deep wouldn't be in consideration. Prime Minister Turtle was astonishingly quick. His current strength had now reached the pinnacle of level 11. In just a few months he would be able to reach level 12. We will be entering the Eastern Sea soon. There's a trench in the Eastern Sea that reaches a depth of over 7,000 meters. Moreover, the Eastern Sea isn't too far from Rivertown. Wang Xian stood on Prime Minister Turtle and looked ahead of him. The sea ahead was much deeper. Barely any sunlight could reach this depth. The density of fish around was also higher. Wang Xian didn't devour the schools of fish. Instead, he ordered Prime Minister Turtle to swim forward rapidly. That is? What a huge shark! It's over 14 meters long. Wang Xian looked to his left and his pupils couldn't help but constrict. That huge shark was looking in the direction of Wang Xian attentively with his cold-looking eyes. That is clearly the territory of a race. Wang Xian thought to himself. In the depths of the sea, different races would occupy different territories. If one entered into their territory, the person would suffer horrifying attacks from the race. Continue ahead. This was the first time Wang Xian had toured such a huge area of the seabed. This experience also allowed him to understand how horrifying the seabed was. There were underwater monsters with 4 huge limbs and looked just like a dinosaur. There were creatures that spanned over 2 meters, had countless legs and a tail with spikes that glowed in a dull glimmer. There were powerful fish that resembled tanks and had horrifying-looking heads. And there were fish that resembled bats with sharp heads and poison stings. These species were horrifying creatures that Wang Xian had not seen previously. They loitered within their own territory on the seabed and emitted horrifying auras. Wang Xian didn't clash with them. Even when these horrifying creatures charged towards him, he simply ordered Prime Minister Turtle to get away rapidly. Soon, I'll be competing with you guys for supremacy in the seas. Wang Xian's lips curved into a smile as he looked ahead. This is? Right ahead of Wang Xian, there were multiple towering underwater mountains. Each mountain was approximately 200 meters tall. Among them, the largest mountain was over 200 meters tall. These mountains were densely packed. In an area that spanned several tens of meters in radius, there were 20 mountains. Other than the mountains, what caught Wang Xian's attention was the faint glow of the surroundings. The glow came from the jellyfish. In this region there were lots of jellyfish. They were densely packed and illuminated the area as though it was the day. Magical and beautiful. Together with the surrounding mountains, this would be a great location to build the Dragon Palace. Wang Xian looked around him and revealed a satisfied expression. The tallest mountain in the center could become his resting place or the accommodation for the Dragon King. As for the surrounding mountains, it could be allocated to roving heavens and the others. This shall be it. Wang Xian looked around him in satisfaction. However, just as he made up his mind, he squinted his eyes and looked attentively towards a far place. Right there, a bloom of humongous jellyfish was swimming towards the various mountains. Although their speed wasn't fast, their terrifying bodies made Wang Xian worried. In the middle of the bloom, there was a jellyfish with countless tentacles. It was almost the size of the entire mountain. It was shaped like an oval and spanned over 10 meters. As for its tentacles, they were 50 to 60 meters long. The densely packed glowing tentacles covered an area over 100 meters. How could there be such a huge jellyfish? Wang Xian was shocked. Other than the largest jellyfish, there were multiple jellyfish with tentacles of 30 to 40 meters. The 20-odd jellyfish together illuminated the entire region. Before the eyes of Wang Xian, these jellyfish landed on the peak of each mountain. Their tentacles scattered between the mountain peaks. When looking from afar, the region resembled mountains that were glowing. This is the territory of these huge jellyfish. Wang Xian's eyebrows knitted together. Clearly, this place had been occupied by this powerful jellyfish race. Let's go take a look. Wang Xian directed his thoughts to Prime Minister Turtle and commanded him to move closer towards one of the jellyfish. When Prime Minister Turtle was approximately 100 meters away from a jellyfish, the tentacles of the jellyfish, which were resting on the mountain, moved abruptly. It was as though they had eyes. Those soft tentacles were covered in razor-sharp needles and pointed towards them. Swish, swish, swish. At the next instant, the densely packed needles that covered the surrounding 50 meters swept towards Wang Xian. Aurora Jellyfish. Level 11. Extractable Dragon Energy. 254,433. A level 11 jellyfish. When Wang Xian saw the information about this jellyfish, he wasn't too surprised. Boom! At this moment, Prime Minister Turtle made a move. A wall of earth rose from the seabed and completely blocked off the needles from the jellyfish. Let's go. Wang Xian instructed Prime Minister Turtle after seeing other jellyfish in the vicinity starting to move. Prime Minister Turtle moved its limbs and left this region rapidly. The bloom of jellyfish did not give chase upon seeing Wang Xian and Prime Minister Turtle leaving. They slowly landed back on the peak of the mountain. The largest jellyfish must be level 12 while the rest are level 11. Wang Xian frowned slightly. Among his subordinates, only Prime Minister Turtle, Roving Heavens and Roving Yuxia were level 11. It would be difficult to deal with this bloom of jellyfish. There are still too many terrifying creatures in the seas. The Dragon Palace still isn't sufficiently powerful. Wang Xian felt a little bitter. He was in an exceptionally good mood, as more than 90% of the materials needed to construct the Dragon Palace had been gathered. But one issue still bugged him: the choice of location for the Dragon Palace. It was difficult to snag a good location, given that the combat abilities of some Dragon Palace members were still weak. By day 3, however, 2 pieces of good news came along. Ding! The collection of materials for the construction of the Dragon Palace is complete. Please select your construction site. At last, the collection of materials meant for the Dragon Palace was completed. The construction could now commence immediately. While the second piece of good news came from the Dragon Palace members. As he stood amidst the seas, Wang Xian looked ahead where the 9 venomous sea snakes had gathered. Pieces of long skin were shedding off their bodies as they slithered in quick rhythms, while the pairs of horns on their heads began to grow out. There were also changes to their heads. They were no longer rounded like that of a snakehead. Rather, they had gotten more pronounced and dimensional, which made them appear more sophisticated and majestic than before. For small bumps had also emerged from their abdominal area. While their bodies had grown up to around 10 meters as they began to fade in color, gradually turning white. They've evolved and upgraded to level 11. But they've still got more to go if they wish to evolve into serpents. Wang Xian cheered in excitement. The 9 venomous sea snakes had always been the stronger of powers amongst the Dragon Palace members, given that they possessed the bloodline of the Wind Divine Dragon. When they joined forces, killing a level 11 creature became a breeze for them. Now that they had upgraded to level 11, their abilities are already beyond formidable even though they had yet to evolve into serpents. The powers within the Dragon Palace are still inadequate. Now that the 9 venomous sea snakes have evolved, it has since raised the overall powers of the Dragon Palace by 2 to 3 times. Wang Xian laughed contently. The 9 venomous sea snakes, each measuring 10 meters long, were as thick as an adult human thigh. And when they glided in the waters, optical illusions would form along with their trails due to their shocking speeds. These 9 venomous sea snakes have evolved to level 11. Now's the time to seize the territory of the Aurora Jellyfish, Wang Xian said with a glow in his eyes. Although there were over 20 level 11 Aurora Jellyfishes, they could well handle a little over a dozen of them with their current prowess. Together with Prime Minister, Roving Heavens and Roving Yuxia, their chances of success were high. Make preparations. We're constructing the Dragon Palace, Wang Xian ordered cheerfully, before heading for his villa. As of now, construction workers engaged by Mo Qinglong and Mo Yuan had begun with the transformation works on the floating island. Based on estimates, it would not be long before the works were completed. As Wang Xian stepped into the villa, he saw a group of girls and walked over with a wide smile. "Qinghua, have you finished settling the company matters?" Wang Xian asked with a grin, before he shamelessly squeezed himself into the seat in between Guan Shuqing and Lan Qingyue. "Yep, it's settled," Lan Qingyue replied as she leaned against Wang Xian's body briefly. "As for now, I can relax for a short period," she continued. "Yep. And all of you can follow me to a place tomorrow," Wang Xian said to them after a moment of hesitation. He planned to bring them around the Dragon Palace after it had been completed. Some things cannot be kept in the dark, and Wang Xian had no intention of hiding it either. It was easy to explain why he could transform into a divine dragon. He could attribute this to having succeeded the divine dragon's legacy. During the cultivation on Earth, there were bloodline cultivators who would transform into beasts. Hence, although his becoming the divine dragon would be astonishing, it would not be considered too atypical to say the least. "Can't do, we have classes to attend tomorrow." Lan Qingyue and Guan Shuqing shook their heads to decline. "You have to make this trip. I have something to show all of you." Xiaoyu, Wang Xian refuted. "Brother, I can't make it tomorrow. I'm making a trip back to Thistles and Thorns sect with Mentor. The youth tournament's commencing soon. I've got to make preparations." Xiaoyu rejected Wang Xian's offer without waiting for him to finish his sentence. Wang Xian smiled and nodded back. There were 3 ships that looked distinctly different from ordinary ships. The bodies of these ships were black and looked incomparably tough. On the ship, there were many martial artists. Every single one of them held a sharp longsword in their hands. They were attacking the surface of the sea. In the sea, a horrifying sea creature that spanned several dozens of meters long was tumbling furiously. Several martial artists were dashing across the sea with their longswords and slashing the creature. Chapter 357. Immortal Jellyfish. 1. Boom boom boom. Pat pat pat. The sky above the seas was capricious. As a thunderstorm raged without the slightest warning, it poured rainwater on the entire ocean. Within the ocean somewhere along the eastern sea, Wang Xian was maneuvering his huge body underwater, while staring coldly at the world before him. As the rain continued to rage, it sent crashing waves while throwing the world above into darkness. Yet underwater all was still and calm. The waves had not been tidal, hence they did not give rise to any ripples underwater. Somewhere ahead, the entire sea had been brightly lit by the jellyfish, which came in colors of all sorts and appeared very dreamy. Alongside were numerous seamounts, looking all vast and imposing. Wang Xian looked on with narrowed eyes as he swept his gaze back. "Occupy this place and build the palace," he ordered. "Yes, Dragon King," the group of Dragon Palace members replied as they gazed off in preparation. "Let's go." Wang Xian gestured. With quick reflexes, he shifted himself and charged forward, oozing a dignified air of the divine dragon as he did. Following behind, Prime Minister Turtle and other members displayed a menacing stance as they charged like an imposing army troop. Pat pat pat. Before Wang Xian and gang could approach, sounds of gushing water emerged. Jellyfishes began to rise above the more than 20 seamounts, swaying their countless tentacles along. Their pace was somewhat slow, but visually aesthetic, as each tentacle shimmered with lights. The sloshing of water had come from the largest jellyfish located in the center, and as it swayed, all remaining jellyfish followed in tandem. As they ascended, their countless tentacles began to reach out towards Wang Xian and gang. Besides these 20 over Aurora jellyfishes, another jellyfish with a tentacle of over 10 meters slowly emerged from the back of other seamounts. Within a radius of tens of kilometers, All the jellyfish began to ascend and fill the sea like a star-studded sky. However, while the jellyfish had come in astonishing numbers, their fighting abilities were relatively weak. Their movements were slow, especially the smaller jellyfish, and did not pose the slightest threat to Wang Xian and gang. Howl howl! Together with the rest, Wang Xian, Prime Minister Turtle, roving heavens made low growls before they gradually approached. Zoom zoom zoom! When the gang was about 1,000 meters away from the swarm of jellyfish, 23 of them shot their tentacles out, from which countless aquaneedles darted towards the gang. Each jellyfish had more than 100,000 tentacles to say the least. With 23 of such terrifying creatures, there were more than 1,000,000 aquaneedles shooting past the waters and coming for the gang at once. Howl howl! Behind the gang, the Wuxia clan from the Dragon Guard division hollered in unison. As they raised their weapon-like arms, all the Wuxias filed out in a single line and charged ahead towards the opponents. Waters began to tumble as they crashed towards the flood of aquaneedles. Howl! Prime Minister Turtle glided gracefully to the seabed, before pieces of the seabed floor were uprooted and thrust in the direction of the aquaneedles. Dragon journeys the 4 seas! Wang Xian shouted as he swished his tail, to which the surrounding waters began to tumble violently. Boom boom boom! The sea waters began to surge and crash at each other. The battle could break out at any moment. Kill! Wang Xian commanded with no hesitation. With quick shifts, he charged forth at the largest and centermost jellyfish. The rest of the Dragon Palace members swooped over towards the remaining giant jellyfish. When they saw Wang Xian and gang coming at them after intercepting their aquaneedles, the swarm of jellyfish began to wiggle their tentacles. They stormed up front to meet Wang Xian and gang face to face. Aurora Jellyfish, Level 12. Extractable Dragon Energy, 1,322,321. Wang Xian took in the information as he narrowed his eyes. They were level 12 jellyfish just as he had expected. Shoo shoo shoo! The tentacles lashed at Wang Xian like aqua whips. Gore! In an instant the shield thickened to tens of meters. The most formidable defense by an earth dragon. As the aurora jets pierced through the water shield and landed on roving lobster's pincers, sounds of metal clashing could be heard. These pincers were the toughest parts on roving lobster. They were even sharper and tougher than inborn spiritual weapons. Swish swish swish. When the aurora jellyfish noticed that its attacks were futile on roving lobster, it changed its target instantly and attacked roving girl instead. Pa! However, the aurora jellyfish was shocked to see its attacks landed on the clamshell instead. The aurora jets didn't leave any marks on the heavy clamshell that had a blue glow. The defense of the clamshell was even more insane than the pincers of roving lobster. Ka ka ka. In this split second, roving lobster swung its huge razor-sharp pincers towards the aurora jellyfish. Beside roving girl and roving lobster, Prime Minister Turtle went against 2 aurora jellyfish at the same time and easily crushed them. When the blue aurora jets landed on the heavy shell of Prime Minister Turtle, all they left were small white dots. Other than having a horrifying defense, the Prime Minister Turtle also had incredible earth control ability. Roving Girl, Roving Lobster and Prime Minister Turtle were the first 3 subordinates Wang Xian had taken in. The time they had to practice their cultivation arts of the Divine Dragon was also the longest. At level 10, Roving Girl and Roving Lobster could go against a level 11 Aurora Jellyfish. As for Prime Minister Turtle, he could even crush 2 Aurora Jellyfish. Prime Minister Turtle's strength was also the strongest among all the other members of the Dragon Palace. Even the 9 venomous sea snakes, which possessed the bloodline of the Wind Divine Dragon, were slightly inferior. On the other end, the 9 venomous sea snakes were equally incredible in battle. Although they had not evolved to the serpent stage, they already possessed some strength and might of a serpent. When moving within the sea, they were just like phantoms. Despite having huge bodies, it was still hard to catch sight of them. One could really describe them as moving with wizardly elusiveness. The bodies of the 9 venomous sea snakes shimmered as they approached the aurora jellyfish rapidly. At the same time, they carried razor-sharp wind blades that penetrated the aurora jellyfish directly. Complete domination. For the strongest Dragon Guard division of the Dragon Palace, Roving Yaksha led a group of Yaksha warriors to fight against 3 aurora jellyfish. Their attacks were potent and destructive. While fighting and defending together, they were able to kill an aurora jellyfish in an extremely short period of time. However, Wang Xian was shocked to notice no signs of injuries on the jellyfish that had been killed and sank into the bottom of the sea. The dragon energy within it had already dissipated, and it was definitely strange. After taking a quick glance, Wang Xian turned his attention to the aurora jellyfish ahead of him and revealed a smirk. He suspended himself in the sea and slowly swayed his dragon tail. Below him, clumps of earth started rising and coalesced into one. Boom boom boom. Subsequently, a huge piece of earth flew over, combined and quickly condensed together. Gradually, a huge 20-meter-tall earth mountain appeared on Wang Xian. Roar! Wang Xian opened his mouth and ejected a stream of earth dragon energy that surrounded the earth mountain. Rumble rumble. The earth mountain condensed further and emanated heavy and horrifying aura. With a movement, the earth mountain appeared above him and was directed towards the aurora jellyfish. Swish swish swish. 50-meter-long tentacles of the aurora jellyfish moved rapidly like thousands and thousands of ice needles towards Wang Xian. Roar! Wang Xian lifted his head and directed the earth mountain above him to shield his head. Subsequently, Wang Xian manipulated the earth mountain and pushed it towards the aurora jellyfish ahead of him. The earth mountain carried incredible momentum as it crashed towards the aurora jellyfish. Pa pa pa. The aurora jellyfish wrapped its tentacles around the earth mountain. On the surface, dullish yellow energies clashed directly with the blue glow on the aurora jellyfish. Chapter 359 Vastless Sea. Establishment of the Dragon Palace. 1. Boom! Following the crashes due to the violent collision, the huge mountain of earth blew into pieces. The lights on the tentacles of the aurora jellyfish began to flicker, before it eventually disappeared completely. Atop the jellyfish, its gigantic head measuring 10 meters in diameter was lit brightly in blue. The rays were shielding against the surging earth bits as a result of the explosion earlier. The entire mountain of earth measured 20 meters in height. Hence its impact during the explosion was powerful enough to send waters as far as 1,000 meters away on a violent tumble. Huge waves billowed even in the deep seas 1,000 meters below. TSK TSK TSK. Eventually, all remnants of blue light on the giant aurora jellyfish blew out. This caused its surrounding area to dim in an instant. Meanwhile, within the territorial waters nearby, the area began to darken as the huge jellyfish began losing their glow one by one. Out of fear and shock, the smaller jellyfish nearby dispersed themselves as they began to scramble for safety. In spite of this, a huge proportion of the jellyfish swam over to the carcass of the aurora jellyfish, as they glowed alongside the body which had lost all luster. Wang Xian smiled briefly as he swept his glance across. The battle nearby ended quickly, as Prime Minister Turtle and the rest swam over to Wang Xian's side. Reports Dragon King. The Devil Division has lost 50 men, while there are no further casualties from the rest of our men. The voice of Prime Minister Turtle drifted from behind Wang Xian, as the former made his update. Wang Xian nodded in acknowledgement, before turning his head over to face the Devil Division. Casualties were inevitable, since the Devil Division had been the weakest within the Dragon Palace in terms of combat powers. 700 or so devil monkeys remained out of the initial 800. That said, the remaining survivors were all level 8 to 9 combatants. The weaker ones had all perished in the battle earlier. They're still too weak. If only they hadn't died. Wang Xian sighed. But he soon recovered with a satisfied smile as he surveyed the territorial waters, unable to contain his excitement. With a change of stance, he swam over to a nearby seamount with no delay. As he rested atop the seamount, he scanned the surrounding areas. This is the place, Wang Xian said as he inhaled deeply. Construct the Dragon Palace. He uttered the words with a surge of emotions. Ding! The collection of materials for the construction of the Dragon Palace has been completed. Scanning the territorial waters around to assess its suitability for the construction. Do you want to build the Dragon Palace? An elementary Dragon Palace will come with a Dragon King Hall, Dragon Transformation Pool, Dragon's Gate, Sea Stabilizing Immortal Column, Dragon Cave, Dragon Field and Dragon Array. The sound from the system explained while Wang Xian listened with stirred emotions. Construct. Boom. Constructing the Dragon Palace. The voice, which seemed like it was calling from both heaven and earth as well as the primeval era, called out to Wang Xian within his head. This was then followed by rays of pre-cosmic light which shone in front of him. The pre-cosmic rays began to scatter out, and shone over an area 10 kilometers in radius, while endless energy began pouring in over an even bigger area 1,000 miles in radius. The weather began to evolve. Energies from the entire ocean, earth elements and water elements including those from aquatic plants, metal elements from rocks and stones, as well as spiritual energy of all sorts were sapped. Together, the energies gathered over and grew immensely in strength, as if to split sky and shatter earth, as the pre-cosmic rays continued to shine over the area of 10 miles in radius. Under Wang Xian's astonished gaze, major changes began to take place from beneath his feet. The entire seamount was going through major transformations at alarming speeds which could be captured by the naked eye. A majestic Dragon King Hall emerged below Wang Xian. The majority of the seamount, which measured 200 meters in height, had been transformed. A huge hole had been dug out from its lower area. The upper area of the seamount was now supported by 2 titanic pillars. Thereafter, a royal residence hall emerged in the middle of the seamount, and appeared absolutely extravagant. Down below, a golden dragon throne measuring 3 meters in length appeared. While underneath the dragon throne lay the mesmerizing Dragon King Hall, decked in silver and gold. As coral colonies lined the sides of the hall, shimmering in different hues, numerous sedimentary rocks were placed and spaced out as seats for guests. The entire grand hall occupied a space measuring 2,000 meters in radius, making it appear incredibly spacious. Creak creak. The Dragon King Hall has been completed. Right then, behind the Dragon King Hall where 3 seamounts stood, a giant crater measuring 1,000 meters in radius appeared in the centermost region of the seamount range. Following which, several colorful pillars rooted out, which were gradually embellished by multiple divine dragon motifs. There were 9 pillars in all, each measuring 50 meters in length and 3 meters wide. They were accompanied by divine dragon motifs of 9 different elements. As the dragons sprawled across the pillar surface, their heads pointed towards the direction atop the giant crater with their mouths gaping open. The divine dragons belonged to the 9 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, and darkness. Yet there was nothing in the giant crater. The Dragon Transformation Pool has been completed. Creak creak creak. Immediately after, on the sides of the Dragon King Hall, more than a dozen seamounts began to shift unimaginably. On the right of the hall, the lower regions of the seamounts began to hollow, where it was replaced by pillars which now supported the entire structure. The giant hole that was created stretched diagonally underground, reaching up to 5,000 meters in depth. While numerous luxurious caves emerged within its interior, there was one main cave followed by other remaining chambers. The Dragon Cave has been completed. Boom boom boom. Along with the loud blasts and continuous booms, a dragon field measuring 2,000 meters wide and 6,000 meters long appeared in the middle of the seamount range. Pop pop pop. The sides of the dragon field were lined with multiple weapon racks, although there were no weapons on them. The dragon field has been completed. Zing 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 zing. Just then Wang Xian sensed an object sprouting out from the ground beneath. True enough, a titanic pillar surfaced then and there. The pillar was located at the back of the Dragon King Hall, measuring 5 meters wide and 200 meters long. On the pillar, the characters "Sea Stabilizing Immortal Column" were embossed in giant gold font. The appearance of the Sea Stabilizing Immortal Columns caused energies from the area of within a 1,000-meter radius to begin surging over. As they poured in, the Sea Stabilizing Immortal Columns began to shine with a brilliant sheen. It looked majestic beyond comparison. The sea-stabilizing immortal columns have been completed. Creak, creak, creak. Beyond a series of gold shimmers, at the four corners of the Dragon Palace, several dragon's gates measuring 100 meters tall and 200 meters wide appeared. On the four dragon's gate were two words written in giant gold font, which read Dragon Palace. A blue ripple appeared in the middle of the gates, as if to create a nebulous divider. The dragon's gates have been completed. Boom, boom, boom. As the final touch, a formidable energy swirl appeared above the Dragon Palace. Like raging floodwaters upon the release of the barrage crest gates, underwater energies within the area of 1,000 miles in radius began to surge into the Dragon Palace. The energy surge resulted in the shimmering of the more than 20 seamounts, as though they were brimming with life. The entire Dragon Palace and its surroundings underwater were brightly lit up, while corals of assorted colors gleamed with radiance. The dragon array has been completed. The energy from the skies continued to be injected into the Dragon Palace, but eventually came to stabilize. The Dragon King Hall, Dragon Transformation Pool, Dragon's Gate, Sea-Stabilizing Immortal Columns, Dragon Cave, Dragon Field, and Dragon Array had all been completed. Ding! The progenitor tree in the Dragon King has been detected. Should this be transferred into the Dragon King Hall? The voice from the system inquired. Transfer. Wuxia answered with no delay, despite his slight surprise. Chapter 360 Vastless Sea. Establishment of the Dragon Palace 2. Ding! Just as he finished his words, the jade-green progenitor tree that he had no use for, and which had always been in his chest area in his body flew out. The green glow that was emanated from the progenitor tree was brimming with vitality. For the entire tree, there was only a single branch which glowed in a grayish light. Rumble! The moment the progenitor tree appeared, the entire Dragon Palace shook. The Dragon Array was activated and intense energy was extracted from the surrounding radius of 1,000 meters. A vortex of energy formed above Wuxia's head once again. Feeling the dense energy within the vortex, Wuxia was certain that if this vortex of energy were to land on him, he would be crushed to death. All the energy flushed towards and into the progenitor tree. The intense energy instantly made the progenitor tree glow in a more dazzling green. As the glow shone brighter, the progenitor tree that was just the size of a palm initially was now growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Gradually, the progenitor tree grew to approximately 5 meters tall, and the only grayish branch on it had also reached 2 meters. This made the entire progenitor tree look a little unique. The progenitor tree remained suspended in the sea while rotating. Eventually, it flew towards the dragon throne and entrenched itself behind the dragon throne. As for the branch, it was directly above the dragon throne. Wuxia was shocked to witness the change to the progenitor tree. Ding! Dragon Palace established. Rumble! At this point, peace and silence returned to the entire sea after a loud rumble propagating through the seas and the notification of the system. However, horrifying images and scenes erupted in Wuxia's mind. The majestic Dragon Palace surfaced gradually from the water surface, and a water divine dragon that was over several thousand meters long stared solemnly before it. Behind it, there were countless crawfish soldiers, crab generals and various species of Dragon Palace members. Before it, countless humans stood on a large and vast piece of land. Kill! A wave of sky-shaking murderous intent filled with bloodlust swept across. As the horrifying battle began, the water divine dragon swayed its body and incited a tsunami that swept forward. Countless incredible humans took it directly and fought with the countless members of the Dragon Palace in a gruesome battle. At this point, the scene in Wuxia's mind changed. Countless humans with incredible auras and majestic armor stood on clouds and were staring into the sea. A green dragon and countless Dragon Palace members were waiting in the sea. Once again, an intense battle erupted between the two factions. Fresh blood dyed the entire sea red. In the vast sea, an inferno divine dragon was swaying its huge body that spanned over 10,000 meters. Behind it, there were various fearsome-looking Dragon Palace members. Before them, There were densely packed groups of wild beasts. Roar! The cries of the dragon and wild beasts signaled the beginning of another bloody battle. The scenes in Wang Xian's mind constantly changed. Each scene was filled with blood and violence, among which this blood was shed by divine dragons, dragon palace members, humans and wild beasts. There were corpses of densely packed zergs, and a corpse of a divine dragon that was over 10,000 meters long. There were creatures with wings that emitted light. There were races with wings that emitted black auras and looked devilish. There were strange creatures that were burning in flames. There were various powerful races that roared on land, whistled in the seas and growled in space. Other than battles, all Wang Xian could see was blood. Survival of the fittest. There's no right or wrong in battles between races and battles for resources. To become an invincible divine dragon, you have to experience battles. The path to invincibility is to be laid with countless corpses. The strong rule and the winners take all. Invincible divine dragon shall stand on top of the universe. As the images dissipated, the two messages resounded in Wang Xian's mind and shocked him. Amidst the images that were shown to him, some were regarding divine dragons attacking other races while others were about other races hunting and killing divine dragons. Survival of the fittest. Resources in survival belonged to the strong. Weaklings had no right to live. They could either choose to drag out an ignoble existence or die. Every king's throne is built on the corpses of countless living creatures. Blood, war and destruction are inevitable. Wang Xian's mental state had undergone a huge transformation. The scenes and images shown to him had given him huge thoughts and feelings. Divine dragons were the highest tier existence within the universe. At the very beginning, divine dragons had been born with destructive forces. However, the divine dragon race had been shrinking at a horrifying pace. The top-tier bloodlines in the universe were usually few in number. Creatures like divine dragons were powerful. However, there were also humans in the universe that could get together, zergs that were huge in number and demon race that were made up of various wild beasts. When their numbers reached a certain level, they could still slay a dragon. They could still eradicate top-tier bloodline existences. This had led to the rapid extinction of many creatures with top-tier bloodline in the universe. To prevent themselves from being annihilated, divine dragons had built dragon palaces and developed the marine animals. Through this, they had once again regained their status as the most elite race in the universe. A dragon palace was extremely important to a divine dragon. Dragon palaces were the reasons why divine dragons could compete for supremacy in the universe. Wang Xian's eyes beamed and faint majestic aura emanated from his body. He looked at the dragon palace below him, and the information on the dragon palace surfaced in his mind. Dragon Palace. Level 1. Dragon King. Wang Xian. Level 7 5 Elements Divine Dragon. Structures. Dragon King Hall. Level 1. Increase cultivation and regeneration speed of the Dragon King by 300%. Dragon Transformation Pool. Level 1. Absorb dragon blood to transform into divine dragon. Dragon blood. None. Dragon Gates. Level 1. Leap through the dragon gates to become a dragon. Effective for level 12 and below creatures. See Stabilizing Immortal Column. Level 1. Main Pillar of Dragon Palace. Ensure stability 10 miles around Dragon Palace. Increase fighting capacity of Dragon Palace members by 50%. Dragon Cave. Level 1 Possess 8,000 Dragon Caves. 200% cultivating speed within Dragon Caves. Dragon Field. Level 1. Increase 100% enlightenment rate when practicing in Dragon Field. Dragon Array. Level 1 Spiritual Energy Gathering Array. Increase spiritual energy gathering by 100%. Water Region Array Level 1. Could resist attacks from level 12 creatures and below. Spiritual Item. Progenitor Tree. Level. Can revive level 12 and below creatures. The information on the Dragon Palace was displayed fully in the mind of Wang Xian. Level 1 Dragon Palace was the most preliminary Dragon Palace. The preliminary Dragon Palace was just the model of a Dragon Palace established by the system. Wang Xian could strengthen the preliminary Dragon Palace and build more structures. For example, he could build a spiritual medicine garden, an elixir refining room and others. Other than that, the Dragon Palace could only increase in level after all the structures in it had been increased to level 2. When Dragon King Hall increased to level 2, cultivation speed would increase by 600%. The materials required would be 10,000 spiritual stones and a ton of spiritual grade metal. For the dragon transformation pool to increase to level 2, it would require 10,000 spiritual stones and 100 tons of blood from spiritual level creatures. For dragon gates to increase to level 2, it would require 10,000 spiritual stones and a ton of spiritual level water attribute materials. For each level, the effects of the structure would increase by a fold. However, the materials required greatly shocked Wuxia. Spiritual level materials and spiritual grade metals would mean materials and metals above level 10. The few requirements stated above were already insane. However, it got worse for the remaining structures. For example, to increase the level of the dragon field, it would require 1,000 inborn spiritual weapons. For the dragon array to increase in level, it would require 10 level 12 arrays. Wuxia proceeded further inwards and walked for a whole 10 minutes before he sighted the dragon cave on the right. The dragon cave was meant as the place of residence and cultivation for the Dragon Palace members. Living inside could help them reduce the time required to evolve by 2/3. Hence, it was the place to accelerate the combat abilities of the Dragon Palace members. There are only 1,000 rooms in one dragon cave. 10,000 spiritual stones will be required for the addition of another dragon cave, while 100,000 will be required to upgrade the cave's level. Wuxia contemplated to himself. The dragon cave was no doubt pivotal to the Dragon Palace members. However, given that there were currently less than 1,000 members, one dragon cave would suffice for now. That said, there was still a need to construct more dragon caves, should the number of henchmen increase in the future. Wuxia continued forward. The Dragon King Hall, also the largest building within the Dragon Palace, emerged right ahead. To enter the Dragon King Hall, one must climb up 9 steps, where each was half a meter tall. With one leap, Wuxia entered directly into the Dragon King Hall. With a heated gaze, he looked intently at the golden dragon throne, which stood at 3 meters tall. And although it stood at a moderate 3 meters, the golden dragon throne spanned an overwhelming 15 meters wide. This was enough for Wuxia to rest atop in his divine dragon form, or even lay spread out. Step by step, Wuxia walked ahead. On both sides of the hall were many stone benches about 5 meters wide, meant as the seats for the Dragon Palace members. As he arrived at yet another 9 steps, Wuxia eyed the dragon throne ahead before making his way up and sitting on the center of the throne. "Greetings, Dragon King." The crowd of Dragon Palace members behind called out to Wuxia respectfully, as they remained below the steps. Wuxia acknowledged with an air of prestige. As he sat on the throne, all the Dragon Palace members came into clear sight within a single glance. Thereafter, he stood up to look at the progenitor tree behind him. The fresh and green progenitor tree brimmed with life while it exuded mysterious powers. With a faint smile, Wuxia cast his gaze further back. It was where the titanic sea stabilizing immortal column had rooted itself within the Dragon Palace. At a staggering 200 meters, it bore the words, "Sea stabilizing immortal column," in huge gold embossments, which shone in gold flickers. Whereas towards the far end of the Dragon King Hall were 9 pillars, each with a divine dragon motif, belonging to the 9 elements respectively. The heads of the dragons were all pointing to the same direction below, where a huge crater stood empty without a single trace of dragon blood. An area further behind had been sealed off by a range of seamounts. All in all, the Dragon Palace occupied a space of 10 kilometers in radius. Filled with endless miracles, it boasted the utmost extravagance and radiated magnificence. Wuxia returned to the front of the dragon throne, where he stood with a stirring of exalted emotions. This was his very own Dragon Palace, a dragon palace of the divine dragon. The Dragon Palace has been built using merely 10,000 spiritual stones, along with some other materials. This is no doubt a benefit provided by the system. The 10,000 spiritual stones aside, the structures within the Dragon Palace would have required at least hundreds of thousands of spiritual stone alone. Wang Xian thought to himself as he looked around. The construction of a level 1 Dragon Palace was considered a benefit by the system. That said, given that the system emphasized consistent upgrading of combat abilities through one's own means, this could also be the one and only time when it granted such a benefit. However, Wang Xian had no clue as to the disasters which this benefit would bring him. The construction of the Dragon Palace had sapped all energy within the surrounding area of 1,000 meters in radius. Meanwhile, along the surface of the seas, a huge island sat, surrounded by 4 other islands. A creepy sea monster? Or a formidable treasure? The second added. Or the emergence of another ancient clan? The third suggested. As the rain fell on them, it splattered off in reflex. Their eyes glistened as they looked on in disbelief. A horrifying underwater creature. Or another uttered. At the same time, within the area of 1,000 miles in radius, on the floating island of the sacred seas of swords, an elder balanced atop a spiritual sword. As he stood, he looked on in the same direction as the others with a face of utter astonishment. They were completely shocked by the sheer force of energy. Howl, howl, howl. Within the same moments and parameters, the various formidable clans, each with a territory of their own, had also experienced a loss of energy while detecting the prominent spiritual energy which had gathered in the direction of the Dragon Palace, to which the creatures menaced as they growled in the seas. With their mammoth bodies and perilous stance, the creatures dashed for the Dragon Palace underwater with icy stares. The newly constructed Dragon Palace was about to welcome its first crisis, a huge calamity in fact. The system had brought along a major challenge to the Dragon Palace, though assisting with its construction as a benefit. Guarded against harm, the Dragon Palace shall remain. Failing this, the Dragon Palace shall perish. Chapter 362. Horrifying creatures besieging the Dragon Palace. 2. The vast oceans were over 2 times the size of the land and filled with mysteries. The area of the Eastern Sea reached over 770,000 square meters. It was even larger than some countries. When the Dragon Palace was established, it absorbed the spiritual energy and other energies from the surroundings that spanned a radius of 1,000 meters. This attracted the attention of all the creatures in the vicinity. Within the 1,000-meter radius, there was a region filled with coral reefs. It was the territory of a ginormous octopus race with huge tentacles. From that region, a horrifying octopus that was over 20 meters long swam swiftly towards the Dragon Palace by swaying its huge tentacles. To its left and right there were 4 to 5 huge octopuses that were over 15 meters long. Behind them, there were 20-odd giant octopuses. They were entirely red in color with huge and bright eyes. Below them, their rows of razor-sharp teeth gave off an eerie glow. This type of ginormous octopus was also known as king cuttlefish. There were myths recorded about these king cuttlefish in the history of the Western world. They were the famous krakens who were able to easily capsize a ship. The squadron of king cuttlefish approached the Dragon Palace at high speed. Subconsciously, they felt that there would be treasures beneficial to them in that place. This originated from the instincts of living creatures. 100 miles away from the king cuttlefish, a group of enormous sharks were also swimming towards the Dragon Palace. Sharks were known to be at the top of the food chain in the sea. However, great white sharks that were known to many were just small animals compared to these enormous sharks. The shark that led the pack had a huge head that took up 1/3 of its entire body. However, the most terrifying part of it was its teeth. It was incomparably large and each tooth was the size of a small child. Its mouth was exposed and one could easily see the shreds of meat that remained between the teeth. This shark was over 18 meters long with a layer of thick fish scales. It constantly emanated strong barbarous and remote vibes. Other than this huge shark, there were a dozen-odd more sharks around it. among which the most attention-grabbing one was a shark with a single eye. Its eye was incomparably huge and was 1/2 meter in size. The single eye was right above the mouth and made the shark look dreadful and eerie. The eye was completely black as though it was the depth of the abyss. The Cyclops shark swam in the middle of the school with the largest mega-teeth shark. To the east of the Dragon Palace, there was only a single organism swimming rapidly towards it. However, this creature possessed horrifying wings. That's right. Those were wings. With just a slight movement, it was propelled forward by several thousand meters. What was most dreadful about it was its size. The body was approximately 30 meters long, and could match the largest creature in the seas, the blue whale. An ancient, barbarous and remote vibe emanated from this horrifying body. It appeared to be from a long time ago and possessed a terrifying aura. The ancient creature Pliosaurus. The Pliosaurus wiggled its wings and dashed over 2,000 meters forward. Right ahead of him, a school of tiger whales appeared suddenly. Tiger whales were the strongest known race on Earth. They were daring enough to attack any creatures including the blue whale. For the portion of the seas that humans knew about, they were the strongest existence. However, when this school of tiger whales felt the horrifying aura from behind them, they immediately swam away in horror. Crack, crack, crack. However, the Pliosaurus accelerated at this instant. Its huge 7-meter mouth bit onto one of these tiger whales and swallowed it whole. Ka-ka. In another bite, it devoured another tiger whale before swimming in the direction of the Dragon Palace once again. To the north of the Dragon Palace, creatures with huge heads and armor-like exteriors were approaching. Instead of having teeth, they had 2 long bony blades that extended from their jaws. These bony blades were just like the scythes of a reaper. They were razor-sharp and could cut, tear and crush any objects. They were the Dunkleistus race from historical times. Different races were swimming towards the mysterious Eastern Sea, due to the appearance of the Dragon Palace. Other than these creatures, there were also Anomalocris that spanned 2 meters and had 2 huge front limbs. Over 100 Anomalocris were moving rapidly on the surface of the sea. There were also huge sea pythons that were over 20 meters long. The skin of these huge sea pythons appeared incomparably tough. There were also swordfish that were over 2 meters long and gave off a metallic shine. At the tip of their heads, there was a long and sharp edge that appeared extremely unique. In addition, there was also an extremely huge blue whale that was swimming towards the Dragon Palace. An ordinary blue whale could grow to over 30 meters long. It was the largest known creature across the land and seas. Some of these whales could even reach the size of some ships. However, the level of this blue whale was still a long distance away from other marine races. At this instant, Wuxia wasn't aware that these creatures were swimming furiously towards the Dragon Palace from all directions. He was standing within the bedroom for the Dragon King, or his personal room. The bedroom of the Dragon Palace was situated on the main peak. It was carved out from the peak that was over 200 meters above the bottom of the sea. The entire bedroom was huge and spanned over 2,000 square meters, among which Wuxia was most satisfied with that large bed. As the most elite race that existed, the Divine Dragon had naturally witnessed countless cultures. The bedroom of the Dragon Palace would naturally have a bed. Moreover, this bed was extremely huge, luxurious and soft. The entire bed spanned 30 meters and was round in shape. Other than the bed, the bedroom had almost everything other humans would require. This greatly piqued the interest of Wuxia. Based on the legacy of the Divine Dragon, Wuxia learned that human-form creatures were the largest race in the entire universe. Many races and creatures could transform into human form. Gradually, they would pick up some habits of humans. What a big bed! This is going to be great! Wuxia looked at the incomparably huge bed. He sat on it and was satisfied with how soft the surface was. If this, Wuxia beamed. At the thought of Guan Shuqing and Lan Qingyue who were still above the sea's surface, he revealed a thrilled expression. Hee. Wuxia couldn't hold back his laughter. I'll bring them over tomorrow and we definitely must make the best use of this bed to have an enjoyable night. Gur. However, just as Wang Xian closed his eyes and let his imagination run wild, a roar propagated throughout the Dragon Palace. He was taken aback. Dragon King! There's another marine race approaching our Dragon Palace. At this moment, the voice of Prime Minister Turtle reached Wang Xian. Wang Xian raised an eyebrow, got up and headed towards the highest point of the main mountain peak. At this place there was a platform with a radius of 100 meters. Standing there he could overlook the entire Dragon Palace. Huh, that is? At this instant, Prime Minister Turtle and the Dragon Palace members were standing on top of their dragon caves and looking in the direction of the southern gate of the Dragon Palace. In the southern direction, a huge group of king cuttlefish were wiggling their huge tentacles as they swam towards the Dragon Palace. Suddenly, as the school of sharks arrived above the Dragon Palace, they were resisted with a sheer force of defense. Bobbing their heads, the leading megateeth shark and cyclops shark glanced ahead with a confused look. Howl, howl! The two sharks growled again. This time, all accompanying sharks crashed ahead with the duo. Bang, bang, bang. That said, the defense of the dragon array sent them spinning in circles once more. In response, the sharks bared their jaws and stared darkly. Besides the megateeth shark race, the school of Dunkleistus also came crashing using their bodies, which were as powerful as war machinery. Tens of Dunkleistus dived ahead, charging straight at the Dragon Palace, which resulted in successive loud crashes as they collided with the dragon array. Pat, 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 pat. Loud and crisp smashes could be heard as the giant king cuttlefishes lashed their extended tentacles against the dragon array. However, the dragon array merely gave off several ripples under the constant bombardment by the respective forces. Why have so many powerful underwater races gathered here at the Dragon Palace? Wang Xian asked. He was puzzled by the tens of thousands of terrifying creatures which had gathered around, amongst which were about 8 level 12 combatants. In addition, there were even more level 11 creatures, hovering at about 40. There were also more than 100 inborn level creatures. The creatures, each with a threatening stance, were dying to enter the Dragon Palace. Wang Xian looked on with a burdened look while the past flickered in his head. There was probably too much commotion during the construction of the Dragon Palace. They were likely attracted over by the two energy swirls. Wang Xian speculated to himself as he inhaled deeply. Thank goodness for the dragon array's protection, he exclaimed. The dragon array was able to defend against the attacks by creatures of level 12 and below. Hence these surrounding creatures would not be able to overcome the defense of the dragon array, unless they were able to enter through the Dragon's Gate. That said, the Dragon's Gate was erected to help sieve out outstanding members for the sake of the Dragon Palace. One who wishes to go past the Dragon's Gate must possess extraordinary wisdom, talent and bloodline. As for these groups of creatures, any attempts to enter through the Dragon's Gate would be immensely tough. Howl, howl. Another growl could be heard, just as Wang Xian heaved a small sigh of relief after checking out the surroundings. This growl was brimming with the utmost austerity and immense compulsion. And as the growl surged past, all surrounding creatures, including the races gathered here, trembled briefly. A tinge of fear flashed across their eyes. The respective races and formidable organisms turned their heads towards the east. Earlier, there hadn't been anyone at the eastern entrance of the Dragon's Gate. But now, a ginormous creature gradually swam its way over. It was a truly magnificent mammoth, as it was over 10 meters bigger than the largest creature which had gathered here. Its physical size was beyond shocking along with its 4 giant wings. As it inched its way over briefly, it sent the surrounding waters on a violent tumble. Like a victor which had transcended from the past, its body boasted a rustic and dull aura. This, Wang Xian muttered in astonishment at the sight of the creature. Pliosaurus. It's a level 13 Pliosaurus. Wang Xian let out a low growl while his face grew heavy at the sight of the level 13 creature. After all, this was a level 13 Pliosaurus. Wang Xian was currently a level 7 divine dragon. In addition, he possessed the pure bloodline of the divine dragon. which was touted as the apex of all bloodlines. Hence, he was able to supersede 5 levels during combat, in the face of ordinary creatures. That said, a 5-level transcendence would mean that Wang Xian was only able to handle a level 12 creature. To think that a level 13 creature had now appeared. How did it attract such a threatening presence? Wang Xian choked in trepidation, as his gaze remained fixed on the Pliosaurus. As the Pliosaurus flapped its wings gently, it ascended above the dragon palace. It then narrowed its eyes and peered at the surrounding creatures with contempt. Formidable as they were, even the megateeth shark, Cyclops shark and Dunkleistus had a tinge of fear in their eyes. Chapter 364. Horrifying creatures besieging the Dragon Palace. 4. Roar. The Pliosaurus lifted its huge head and looked down on the entire Dragon Palace. Eventually, his gaze landed on Wang Xian. Roar, roar, roar. Excitement gleamed in the eyes of the Pliosaurus as he roared loudly. A message was transmitted to Wang Xian. Devour me. When Wang Xian heard the Pliosaurus, he was infuriated. He moved and transformed into a 7-meter-long divine dragon immediately. Roar. He let out a furious roar. Extending his mouth to the fullest, he growled, "Scram!" Roar, roar, roar. Prime Minister Turtle and the other members of the Dragon Palace growled in unison and shot cold looks at the surrounding marine races. Little thing, I'm going to devour you. I'll be able to evolve further after consuming you. The Pliosaurus lowered its head, fixed its gaze at Wang Xian and growled loudly. The level 13 creatures had long had its intelligence manifested. From Wang Xian it could feel a tremendous amount of energy. It had the premonition that if it could devour this little thing, it would be able to evolve further, after which it would be able to enter the broader seas. Wang Xian's eyes lit up and his heart palpitated violently upon hearing the Pliosaurus. Roar! At this moment, the Pliosaurus extended one of its huge wings and slapped it on the dragon array. Crack, crack, crack. In just a single strike, crisp cracking sounds came from the dragon array. Wang Xian looked up and saw cracks appearing at the location where the Pliosaurus attacked. These cracks were healing at a very slow pace. However, Wang Xian was certain that if the Pliosaurus were to attack again, the dragon array would definitely shatter. This won't do. The dragon array wouldn't be able to withstand the attacks of the Pliosaurus. Once the dragon array is shattered, the dragon palace would be destroyed and I wouldn't be able to escape. Wang Xian's expression changed constantly. At this point, he saw the Pliosaurus moving its wing once again. Kill! A deep growl came from Wang Xian. He moved and charged out of the dragon palace through the eastern gates. He couldn't allow the Pliosaurus to attack again. Otherwise all of them would die. Rumble! A 5-meter blue ball of water formed before Wang Xian and was shot towards the Pliosaurus. Roar! Little thing, you are finally out. The Pliosaurus wiggled its huge wing in response to the attack from Wang Xian. Pa! Under the dreadful strength of the Pliosaurus, the water ball shattered instantly. Die! Wang Xian swung his dragon claws towards the wing. Roar! Kill! Behind him, Prime Minister Turtle, Roving Heavens and the crowd followed Wang Xian closely as they charged out of the dragon palace and attacked the Pliosaurus. Roar! The Pliosaurus looked in contempt as he saw Wang Xian swinging his dragon claws at it. The Pliosaurus was almost 5 times the size of Wang Xian at over 30 meters long. When facing this little thing, it wasn't wary at all. Once again, it wiggled one of its wings towards Wang Xian. You must be courting death. Seeing the contempt in the eyes of the Pliosaurus, Wang Xian underwent a transformation. His body turned golden in color as his dragon claws glowed dazzlingly. Pliosaurus. Level 13. Extractable Dragon Energy. 21,112,344. Break. The glow of the metal extended over a dozen-odd meters in an instant. This strike was the best strike Wang Xian could put up. Prime Massacre. The strongest strike. CICI. Roar. The dragon claws struck the 7-meter wing and spewed blood everywhere. The entire wing was ripped off under the attack from Wuxia. Growling grr. The Pliosaurus grimaced in pain. He stared furiously at the broken wing and bloodthirst filled his eyes. How dare you injure me? Little thing, I'm going to devour you. The Pliosaurus extended its other huge wing and stretched its huge head towards Wuxia. Get lost. Wuxia swung his giant claws from the top to bottom. A huge 5-meter dragon claw left 5 trails of blood across the face of the Pliosaurus. Roar! Roar! You shall die! You shall die! Having been injured once again, the Pliosaurus tried to knock Wuxia with its head. Bam! Wuxia was prepared for it. The color of his body changed into that of the Earth Dragon, and he used the shield of the Earth Dragon to withstand the attack. However, the strength of the Pliosaurus was incomparably powerful. Wuxia was knocked back several hundred meters and fresh blood oozed out from his mouth. How dare you injure the Dragon King? Die! At this instant, Prime Minister Turtle, Roving Heavens and other members of the Dragon Palace growled in unison. Huge earthy thorns with horrifying wind blades were launched towards the Pliosaurus. Countless devilish snakes and the huge fork formed from the combined attack of the Wuxia using water streams landed heavily on the Pliosaurus. Ants! The attacks of the members of the Dragon Palace were much stronger under the 50% buff from the Dragon Palace. Previously, if it weren't for the buff from the Dragon Palace, Wuxia wouldn't have been able to injure the level 13 Pliosaurus. All the attacks from the Dragon Palace members landed on and wounded the Pliosaurus, infuriating it further. This group of ant-like existence had actually injured the mighty Pliosaurus. With the buff from the Dragon Palace, we stand a chance in the battle. Wuxia licked away the blood from his mouth. A cold light flashed in his eyes and he turned into the metal dragon once again. Carrying a powerful and sharp edge, he dashed forward. Assist the Dragon King! Prime Minister Turtle shouted out loud. Members of the Dragon Palace glowed in a gold, blue, black and dullish yellow glow as they attacked in unison. The physical body of the Pliosaurus was extremely tough. However, it was just an existence with a lowly bloodline. Moreover, it didn't have any cultivation arts. As for the members of the Dragon Palace, they had all practiced Divine Dragon Transformation. The Devil Division practiced the Devil Dragon Transformation. Roving Lobster practiced the Metal Dragon Transformation, and the Prime Minister Turtle practiced the Earth Dragon Transformation. All of them were better in close combat than the Pliosaurus. Nonetheless, their range attacks weren't any weaker. Countless elemental attacks exploded on the Pliosaurus. Alright. Wuxia beamed. With the strength of all the members of the Dragon Palace, they might just be able to kill a level 13 Pliosaurus with the assistance of the Dragon Palace. Roar! Wuxia growled loudly. Revealing his razor-sharp teeth, he bit towards the Pliosaurus. The Pliosaurus, who was defending against the attacks from the members of the Dragon Palace, instantly felt an intense pain cruising through his body. To the right of his body, a 3-meter-long wound was ripped open. The wound was a meter deep. If it wasn't for its huge body, this strike may very well have been fatal to it. However, a 3-meter-long and 1-meter-deep wound on a 30-meter-long body wouldn't be considered too grave. Rawr! The Pliosaurus was infuriated. It wiggled its huge tail and swept towards Wuxia. Swish! Wuxia's color changed as he turned into the Earth Dragon once again, and relied on the Earth Shield to guard him. Bam! Earth Dragon had the strongest defense among all other attributes. However, Wuxia was still knocked back and threw out blood from the impact. Wuxia wiped off the blood from the edge of his mouth and stared coldly at the Pliosaurus. Roar, roar! All of you here! Kill these ants-like existences for me! At this moment, the Pliosaurus turned to the other creatures around him and gave his orders. Chapter 365. Brutality and Death 1. Wuxia's face contorted as he heard the echoes from the Pliosaurus. He spun his head around to check his surroundings. Meanwhile, up to 5,000 terrifying creatures which formed several formidable clams surrounding Wuxia looked on by the sides with icy stares. But their eyes glistened at the sound of the Pliosaurus. The leaders of each clan possessed extreme wisdom, and they could tell that this Pliosaurus, though horrifying, was no match for them. And yet, amongst all of them, no one except the Pliosaurus was able to break through the defense up ahead, to make it inside the space which they so desired. Howl, howl! The mega teeth shark, which measured 18 meters long, roared at its neighboring cyclops shark, as though the two were communicating. Howl, howl! Immediately after, the two giants let out another growl, before they attacked in the direction of the Dragon Palace members, including Prime Minister Turtle and Roving Heavens. The school of Dunkleistus hesitated as they looked on by the side. However, when they saw the mega teeth shark race attack, they too joined in the fight. As the two powerful races joined forces, the creatures of the remaining races procrastinated no further. In an instant, the looming crowd of haunting creatures sieged towards the Dragon Palace. While two other weaker clans, namely the swordfish, which glowed with a metallic sheen, as well as the anomalocaris, did not join in the siege. Instead, they stared at the Dragon Palace with glistening eyes. Given that their toughest members were but level 11 combatants, these two races thus could not compare to the stronger Mega Teeth, Dunkleistus and King Cuttlefish. All Dragon Palace members, including Prime Minister Turtle, Roving Heavens, Roving Wuxia, Roving Girl and Roving Lobster, responded with a heavy look, at the sight of the formidable creatures which were coming at them from all sides. Kill! Roving Heavens growled in a low pitch. As he did, he raised his rod and glared fiercely in the direction of the Dunkleistus. There were 3 level 12 combatants amongst the school of Dunkleistus. Howl, howl! Roving Wuxia roared. Kill them, he continued. Raising his weapon-like arm, he lashed out at the mega teeth sharks with an apathetic look. Slithering their thick bodies, the 9 venomous sea snakes looked on indifferently at the bunch of deep-sea pythons, of which 4 had made their way over to Roving Wuxia and Roving Heavens. With a heavy look, Prime Minister Turtle landed on the seabed floor, as the surrounding crust began to tremor. And so did Roving Lobster and Roving Girl. Charge, they shouted. Right now, with no room to retreat, they could only battle it out, and it was either kill or perish. Even though there were 8 level 12 creatures amongst the terrifying mass, Prime Minister Turtle and gang would nonetheless battle them the best they could, putting their abilities to the test. After all, they were now boosted by the energy from the Dragon Palace, as well as the Divine Dragon transformation. Boom! Howl, howl, howl! The real battle would break out at any moment, as the opponents lurked. The giant sharks, each measuring over 10 meters, the deep-sea pythons, measuring over 20, the king cuttlefish as well as the school of Dunkleistus, which all spanned over a dozen. Every one of them was a lot larger than the Dragon Palace members. On the other hand, the devil monkeys oozed a devilish aura, and at this moment their population of 700 did not appear to be too many. Moreover, most of the devil monkeys were below the inborn level. Be off and die! Roving Heavens roared. Thereafter, his body mushroomed and grew up to about 7 meters. He looked on emotionlessly, while his body blazed with devilish aura. As he swung his metallic rod, Roving Heavens took aim before striking it at the level 12 Dunkleistus with no holds barred. More than 100 devil monkeys behind him leaped forward and thrust themselves onto the Dunkleistus. Bang! Surprisingly, as the huge rod landed forcefully on the head of the Dunkleistus, it clanged as though metals had crashed against each other. The head of the fish was merely dented as it looked up at Roving Heavens with icy stares. Chapter 366. Brutality and Death 2. SSS. The 5 deep-sea pythons were attacked by 5 venomous sea snakes. Together with the surprise attacks from their subordinates, the bodies of these 5 deep-sea pythons were ripped apart. Blade after blade of wind sliced through them. Bam! The 5 horrifying deep-sea pythons finally met their end as they sank to the bottom of the sea. Leading the 20-odd remaining deep-sea pythons, The 5 venomous sea snakes swam towards the Dunkleosteus race and the mega-teeth sharks. The pressure on the Devil Division, which had suffered heavy losses, was finally relieved a little. However, the battles were still extremely brutal. Devil monkeys were falling each moment. The Dragon Guard Division that was fighting the mega-teeth sharks was also facing the same predicament. For every shark they killed, they would have to sacrifice several patrolling yakshas. Below them, the King Cuttlefish race had surrounded Prime Minister Turtle. Streams of poisonous fog had completely shrouded the Prime Minister Turtle, and their horrifying tentacles had gripped tightly onto Prime Minister Turtle. However, Prime Minister Turtle had retracted his head and limbs back into his turtle shell. He lay on the seabed and still maintained his attacks by controlling earth and using earthy thorns. At the same time, he manipulated the earth below him and was digging a huge hole. Prime Minister Turtle constantly released Earthy Thorn and his aura to suppress the King Cuttlefish. This squadron of King Cuttlefish was infuriated. They were determined to kill Prime Minister Turtle after receiving the orders from their leader of the King Cuttlefish. SSS. At this moment, the 3 leaders of the Dunkleosteus race started noticing the number of their kind dwindling rapidly. Subsequently, they let out a furious cry. The strange fish that had gathered around acted like they had received an order as several thousands of level 7 and 8 strange fish charged towards the battles frantically. They were just like piranhas that had picked up the scent of blood as they went on a rampage. Far away from these battles, the swordfish race that had a metallic shine and the blue anomalocaris race retreated further. They appeared to possess extraordinary intelligence. Other than these 2 races which had not entered the battles, all the other races and horrifying creatures were killing the members of the Dragon Palace. Fresh blood had dyed the region before the eastern gate of the Dragon Palace red. Chunks of flesh and corpses were falling towards the bottom of the sea every second. The advantage that the Dragon Palace gained from the 9 venomous sea snakes had completely disappeared. Although those level 7 and 8 creatures were relatively weaker, their numbers were far superior. 400 out of the 700 devil monkeys had perished within the short time frame. Only 60 of the 100 patrolling yakshas were left. Moreover, deaths were still piling up each second. Brutality and death had descended upon this region of the sea. Even so, not a single member of the Dragon Palace had retreated. They had disregarded death and weren't fearful of it. Battles. Killings. Roving Heavens was in a complete state of insanity. A Dunkleosteus had ripped a part of his flesh off of him. One could even see the bone from the wound on his arm. Despite that, he still held the metal rod tightly and attacked the level 12 Dunkleosteus before him with even more fervor. Roving Lobster moved away from the battle with the Dunkleosteus and started killing the level 7 and 8 strange fish around him. With every strike with its pincers, one of these strange fish would die. At this point, the golden surface of Roving Lobster had been dyed red. These strange fish were too numerous. Gradually, the metal body of the Roving Lobster was being chipped away. It was especially so behind his back. His shell was broken and his flesh was exposed. The battle continued for another 5 minutes. The surrounding sea region had been dyed red from the blood. 2/3 of the members of the Dragon Palace had fallen. The bottom of the sea was now filled with the corpses of the devil monkeys, patrolling yakshas and other creatures. Art. Roar, roar, roar. At this moment, Wuxia was bitten again by the Pliosaurus before the eastern gate. He was thrown aside and smashed heavily on the dragon array. Despite turning into the Earth Divine Dragon, his body was still covered in fresh blood. Seeing the deaths of the members of the Dragon Palace around him, Wuxia's face was flushed with anger. His cold eyes were now filled with frenzy. Behind Wuxia, Roving Girl was constantly manipulating water streams to heal Wuxia's injuries. The blue Roving Girl was as white as chalk at this moment as she had almost exhausted all her water attribute energy. Stubborn ants. I'll devour you. The Pliosaurus glanced at the wounds on him once again as it flared up. Within these few minutes, this ant was attacking without concerns of getting injured. When the razor-sharp dragon claws landed on its body, a deep wound would appear instantly. And when he attacked, that ant-like existence would undergo a huge transformation and turn into tough earth. This greatly pissed him off. I have to kill it. Otherwise, all the members of the Dragon Palace, including me, will be dead. I have to kill it. Wang Xian's eyes were bloodshot. As long as he could kill the Pliosaurus, they could retreat back into the safety of the Dragon Palace. Therefore, he attacked without concern about getting injured in the hope of returning to the Dragon Palace to recuperate after killing it. However, the Pliosaurus was too huge. Even if it couldn't use elemental attacks, the power was still tremendous. A swing of its tail could severely injure Wang Xian. If it bit Wang Xian, it could penetrate the scales on his body. Rumble! All of a sudden, a dull explosion erupted from the bottom of the sea. Wang Xian took a quick glance and was greatly shocked. Below them, the Prime Minister Turtle controlled the earth and created an incomparably huge hole. The next instant, he buried with him the King Cuttlefish race that he was battling. Over 20 King Cuttlefish were buried below the seabed with the Prime Minister Turtle. Wang Xian's eyes were red with anger. He glared at the Pliosaurus, transformed into the metal divine dragon and shot towards it at extreme speed. Kill! He was just like a sharp long sword. The dragon claws were like the edge of the long sword, while the body of the divine dragon supported the strike. Desperation. Wang Xian was completely desperate. At this point, he could only risk his life to gain an opportunity to survive. Despite being covered in wounds, he still had to attack desperately. Dragon Spear. Wang Xian growled loudly and pierced towards the Pliosaurus. Get lost, the Pliosaurus grunted. Its horrifying tail swept towards Wang Xian. The tail of the Pliosaurus was over 10 meters long. While sweeping rapidly through the water, it brought along unimaginable strength. Wang Xian was bitter. He gritted his teeth, didn't stop and instead accelerated across. Crack, crack, crack. Just as Wang Xian was about to risk his life to clash with the Pliosaurus, the surface of the seabed suddenly cracked. Prime Minister Turtle spun upwards and crashed into the tail of the Pliosaurus. Rumble! Horrifying collision sounds propagated throughout the vicinity. Dragon King, kill it! A weak voice resounded. Wang Xian looked over and was desolated to see the shell of Prime Minister Turtle cracking at a rapid pace. Bright red blood instantly dyed its huge dullish yellow body. Prime Minister Turtle looked at Wang Xian as its body was swept away. The tail of the Pliosaurus had been stopped after Prime Minister Turtle gave up his life. Tears of blood oozed out of Wang Xian's eyes. Burning through the dragon energy in his body, the metal shine of his body glowed even stronger as he accelerated towards the Pliosaurus. You are just an ant. Die now. The Pliosaurus wasn't concerned that his tail had been stopped. It extended its 7-meter mouth and revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth as it tried to bite towards Wang Xian's dragon head. Dragon King, I'll stop its attack. Suddenly Wang Xian heard a fatigued but pleasing voice. Following which, he saw a sea clam flying towards the mouth of the Pliosaurus. The sea clam enlarged to 4 meters while ascending before landing in the middle of the Pliosaurus' mouth. Ka-ka! The Pliosaurus bit onto the shell of the roving girl. It was taken aback slightly but soon crushed down with all its might. The clamshell cracked slowly. The roving girl had bought less than a second for Wang Xian. I'm going to kill you and devour you. In this split second, Wang Xian flashed across like a golden ray of light. His dragon energy had now been completely exhausted. Bam! Wang Xian pierced the body of the Pliosaurus like a sword. However, he was only able to pierce 2 meters into the horrifying defense of the Pliosaurus, and this wasn't fatal. Luckily, Wang Xian's head was now within the body of the Pliosaurus. He opened his huge mouth and started devouring the flesh and blood of the Pliosaurus from inside. Arg! 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 The Pliosaurus grimaced in pain. It spat out the crushed clamshell, extended its huge mouth and bit onto Wang Xian's tail. At that instant, Wang Xian felt as though his dragon tail had been ripped off of him. Despite that, he had forgotten the pain in his body, as he was entirely focused on devouring the flesh and blood of the Pliosaurus. The location Wang Xian attacked was none other than the throat of the Pliosaurus. He struggled to devour all the flesh and blood and didn't stop for a single instant. Rawr rawr! The pliosaurus cried out in pain. Soon it lost the strength to hold on to Wang Xian, and its voice was softening slowly. Wang Xian could vaguely hear the screams of roving lobster, roving heavens, and the pitiful cries of the devil monkeys. The king of the devil monkey had fallen. He could hear the gruesome screams of the yakshas and the sorrow of roving yaksha. Wang Xian's eyes had turned red from anger. He was still devouring frantically. He wanted to completely consume the pliosaurus as revenge for Prime Minister Turtle, Roving Girl, Roving Heavens, and all his subordinates. The sea before the eastern gate of the Dragon Palace had been completely dyed red with blood. The seawater had now become blood. At this instant, within the Dragon Palace, on the progenitor tree behind the dragon throne, the soul-returning branch was emanating grayish energy. In front of the eastern gate, the corpses of Prime Minister Turtle, Roving Girl, Roving Lobster, Roving Heavens, Roving Yaksha, and members of the Devil Division and Dragon Guard Division flew towards the progenitor tree within the Dragon Palace as blurry and grayish shadows. At the same time, the heads of the 9 elemental divine dragon statues around the dragon transformation pool had lit up suddenly. Before the eastern gate of the Dragon Palace, the flesh and blood that harbored dense energy slowly fused into the seabed. Streams of dragon blood started flowing into the dragon transformation pool from the heads of the 9 divine dragon statues. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.